Welcome back Lincoln currency in the year 2000, as the new millennium dawned and the world was buzzing with the anticipation of technological leaps, economic changes, and the echo of Y2K fears that had just passed without the catastrophic glitches so many had predicted. The United States Mint was quietly producing billions of 1-cent coins. To most people, these small copper-colored pieces were insignificant, slipped into pockets, rattling at the bottom of purses, forgotten in couch cushions and coffee cans, handed over without a second thought at convenience store counters. Yet among them, hidden in plain sight, were certain examples that would one day become numismatic treasures, sparking the interest of collectors and enthusiasts around the world. The 2001-cent Lincoln Memorial penny is, at first glance, simply another in the long line of cents featuring the iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, the front of the coin, and the dignified image of the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. Designed in 1909 by Victor David Brenner for the centennial of Lincoln's birth, the obverse had already been in continuous use for over 90 years by the time the millennium rolled around. The reverse, the work of Frank Gasparo, had been introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth and the 50th anniversary of the Lincoln cent. This pairing had become as familiar to Americans as the flag itself, a miniature piece of art passed from hand to hand billions of times over decades. When you hold a 2000 penny between your fingers, you're feeling a disc just 19.05 millimeters in diameter, weighing approximately 2.50 grams. With a smooth, plain edge and a composition of 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper, the latter applied as a thin plating to give it the traditional color of older, pure copper cents. This shift to copper-plated zinc had been made back in 1982 when rising copper prices meant the intrinsic metal value of a cent was approaching, and in some cases exceeding, its face value. That economic decision forever changed the feel and sound of the coin. Pre-1982 cents are heavier and produce a more resonant ring when dropped, while post-1982 pieces like the 2000 cent have a lighter, almost tinny sound. Yet despite that change in metal content, the design and the cultural symbolism remained the same, connecting generations of Americans who had carried Lincoln's likeness in their pockets. In 2000, the Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 5.5 billion Lincoln cents. The sheer scale of that production meant these coins flooded into circulation, indistinguishable at first glance from those of the preceding and following years. But to the trained eye of a collector, subtle differences can mean everything. Some of these pennies bore a variety known as the wide AM, where the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse were spaced slightly farther apart than on the standard closed AM design. It was a small, almost invisible difference to most people, but to specialists, it marked a coin worth pulling from change. While the closed AM was the standard for circulation strikes in 2000, the wide AM variety was the result of using a reverse die intended for proof coins on a small number of business strikes. This unintentional crossover created a scarcity, and scarcity fuels demand. The intrigue of the 2000 penny doesn't stop there. That year, in a marketing partnership that bridged cereal aisles and minting presses, General Mills and the U.S. Mint collaborated on a promotional giveaway. 10 million freshly minted 2000 Lincoln cents were sealed inside specially marked boxes of Cheerios cereal as part of the first pennies of the new millennium promotion. For many children and families at the time, it was just a fun little bonus in their breakfast, a shiny new coin to add to a piggy bank. But for the collecting community, those Cheerios cents became a point of fascination. While most were standard coins, a small number turned out to be wide AM varieties, and when found in pristine uncirculated condition, these could fetch far more than a single cent on the collector's market, sometimes selling for hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on grading and demand. Now, when we talk about grading, we're diving into one of the most critical aspects of coin collecting. The difference between a coin worth 1 cent and one worth hundreds can come down to the faintest scratch, the tiniest nick, the subtlest wear on Lincoln's cheek, or the memorial's columns. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with mint state 70 representing a flawless coin with no post-mint imperfections visible under magnification. For the 2000 penny, especially in varieties like the wide AM or Cheerios distribution pieces, a high grade dramatically increases market value. In circulated condition, most of these coins are worth no more than their face value. But in uncirculated, high-grade conditions, especially certified by reputable grading services like PCGS or NGC, these can range from a modest premium to prices that make headlines in numismatic circles. It's important to remember that the vast majority of 2000 Lincoln cents will never be worth more than a penny. But for collectors, the thrill lies in the hunt, in the careful examination of pocket change, in the possibility that the next coin they flip over will reveal the slightly wider spacing between two letters that transforms it from ordinary to exceptional. Stories of people finding rare varieties in circulation, tucked away in jars of change, or hidden for decades in dresser drawers fuel the enthusiasm for the hobby. And beyond the monetary value, there's a kind of romanticism in knowing that an object so small, so common, could hold within it a secret worth discovering. As we look deeper into the story of the 2000 1-cent coin, we begin to see how its value isn't just a matter of metal and mintage. It's a product of history, of economics, of design, of human error and intentional artistry, of marketing campaigns that once seemed fleeting but now leave behind artifacts that tell a story about who we were at the turn of the millennium. The Lincoln cent has survived changes in metal composition, shifts in minting technology, debates over its continued production, and fluctuations in collector interest. Through it all, it remains a piece of shared cultural heritage, one that continues to surprise and delight when a rare variety emerges from the background noise of billions of identical coins. When considering the 2000 Lincoln cent, one must place it within the broader story of the penny itself, a denomination that has stirred far more controversy and fascination than its tiny size would suggest. The penny has been part of the American currency system since the nation's earliest days, evolving through designs like the flowing hair, the Liberty cap, the Indian head, and ultimately the Lincoln cent in 1909. By the year 2000, the coin had already been in continuous production for more than 90 years, making it the longest-running design in U.S. coinage history. Over that time, the penny had gone from being a relatively large, substantial piece of copper with real purchasing power to a lightweight zinc token whose metal content was worth less than its face value. Yet the symbol it carried, the image of Abraham Lincoln, remained powerful. Lincoln was chosen for the cent not only because of his status as one of the nation's most revered presidents, but also because his life story, rising from humble beginnings to the highest office in the land, fit perfectly with the egalitarian ideals Americans like to associate with their smallest coin. The year 2000 was also a time of transition in the minting world. Technology had advanced to the point where dies could be produced and polished with extraordinary precision, but human oversight and small errors still crept into the process. The wide AM variety is one such example, born not from intentional design change but from a mismatch between dies intended for proof coins and those used for business strikes. Proof coins, struck with special dies and extra pressure to produce mirror-like finishes, were made with a different spacing between the A and M in America. Somehow, at the Philadelphia Mint in 2000, one of these proof reverse dies found its way into the regular production line. The result was a tiny handful of coins that, while outwardly identical to their billions of siblings, carried that subtle spacing difference, a difference that would later set collectors on high alert hunts through their pocket change. There is something almost poetic about the fact that such a small detail can transform a coin's destiny. Imagine billions of coins rolling off the presses, their designs identical in every respect except for the invisible to most spacing of two letters. For the average person, there's no reason to notice. But for those who do notice, for those who measure and compare and study, it's like finding a rare plant in the middle of a vast forest. This is part of the magic of numismatics. The idea that the extraordinary can hide within the ordinary, waiting for a patient eye to uncover it. The Cheerios promotion only added to that magic. Picture it, January of 2000, parents and children pouring out cereal in the morning and discovering a sealed little package containing a shiny new penny marked with the date of the brand new millennium. To most, it was a charming gimmick. To a few, it was a chance to tuck away something that might one day be worth more than the box of cereal itself. Over time, those coins became known in collector circles, and the search began for unopened packages and pristine examples. A still-sealed Cheerios penny in its original packaging holds a certain nostalgic charm, a tangible link to the optimism and novelty of that first year of the new century. As collectors began grading and cataloging these coins, patterns emerged. While many Cheerios pennies were indistinguishable from standard 2,000 cents, a precious few bore the coveted wide AM design. In high grades, mint state 65 and above, these could command impressive premiums. Auction results began trickling in, showing prices in the hundreds, then occasionally the thousands, for the right combination of rarity and condition. It is in such cases that the seemingly outrageous claims of a coin's massive value, numbers like $234 million, gain their mystique. Realistically, no single 2,000 penny has sold for anything near that number, but the legends grow in the retelling, fueled by the rare but very real fact that some coins do achieve extraordinary auction prices when they are truly unique, historically important, or when they become the subject of intense bidding wars between wealthy collectors. And here we touch on a psychological truth in collecting: value is not fixed. It's not merely the sum of metal content or even rarity. It's also the story, the emotional pull, the competition between those who want to own a particular object. A coin's market price is determined in the moment when two or more determined bidders decide they must have it, and in that heated exchange, values can skyrocket far beyond what a neutral observer might consider reasonable. It's in this way that extraordinary prices, while rare, are possible even for coins that, in another context, might be overlooked. The 2000 Lincoln cent, in its ordinary form, is one of the most common coins of the modern era. Yet in its special forms, the wide AM variety, the Cheerios promotion pieces, the highest grade mint state survivors, it becomes a lesson in how small details, production quirks, and cultural context can elevate the humble to the coveted. These are the coins that collectors keep in flips and holders, label with their grades, and store away not only for their monetary potential but because they represent the thrill of the hunt fulfilled. The economics of penny production at the turn of the millennium also adds an intriguing layer to this story. By 2000, it was already costing the U.S. Mint more to produce a penny than the coin was worth in circulation. The zinc core, the copper plating, the labor, and the distribution costs all combined to push the per unit expense above 1 cent. This trend has only worsened with time, and in recent years the cost to produce a penny has hovered around 3 to 4 cents. This means that, in a purely economic sense, the penny is an inefficient relic. Yet its cultural significance and the resistance to eliminating it keep it alive. That contradiction, that the penny costs more to make than it's worth, yet still serves as the vehicle for some of the most captivating collecting stories, underscores how coins are more than just instruments of commerce. They are artifacts, symbols, even pieces of art that carry meaning beyond their spending power. By the time we're done exploring every facet of the 2000 penny story, you'll see that the claimed market value of $234 million is less about literal, provable sales and more about the lore that springs up around rare finds. It's a testament to how human imagination and passion for history can transform even the smallest, most unassuming object into a talisman of desire. And whether you believe the hype or take it with a grain of salt, there's no denying the enduring appeal of searching through change, hoping to uncover that one coin that stands apart from the rest. The turn of the millennium marked not only a new chapter for the Lincoln cent but also a subtle shift in how Americans interacted with coins in general. By 2000, debit cards were becoming more common, online commerce was beginning to take shape, and fewer people were paying attention to the change they received at the register. This meant that many rare coins, including special varieties of the 2000 penny, could slip through countless transactions unnoticed. While seasoned collectors might have been aware of the wide AM variety by 2001 or 2002, the average person was still blissfully unaware that a small difference in letter spacing could mean the difference between 1 cent and several $100s. This gap in awareness created a strange kind of parallel reality, billions of coins moving through the economy without fanfare, while a small but passionate group scoured bank rolls, cash drawers, and coin jars in search of elusive treasures. The Lincoln cent had by this time become as much a cultural icon as it was a piece of currency. It wasn't just Lincoln's face that gave it gravitas. It was the fact that nearly every American alive had touched one, spent one, found one on a sidewalk, or saved one for luck. Stories of lucky pennies, passed down through families, copper cents kept in baby jars, and pennies tossed into fountains for wishes were part of its mystique. And so when a coin like the 2000 wide AM emerged in the numismatic conversation, it wasn't just a collectible. It was a variation of a familiar object that felt personal to everyone. For those who knew what to look for, the hunt became almost addictive. Under a magnifying glass, the space between the A and M in America told a story about minting processes, about dies being swapped between proof and circulation production lines, about how even in an age of precision manufacturing, human decisions and small mistakes could slip through. And the allure wasn't just in finding one, it was in finding one in perfect, untouched condition. A wide AM in well-worn circulated shape might bring a few dollars, but one graded mint state 68 or higher could command hundreds, sometimes more if bidding was fierce. Auction houses began to see the occasional 2000 wide AM cent come across their blocks, and the prices these coins fetched helped fuel the hype. Numismatic publications ran features explaining how to identify them, often including close-up photographs showing the difference in letter spacing compared to the more common close AM. Online forums lit up with posts from people who had discovered one in change, sparking a wave of hopeful searching. For many, it was less about the money and more about the thrill, proof that something valuable could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to reward a careful eye. Meanwhile, the Cheerios promotion pennies were quietly building their own reputation. The novelty of finding a coin in a cereal box had long faded, but unopened packages started to appear in online marketplaces, often at prices far above their original value. Some sellers targeted nostalgia buyers, people who remembered the promotion and wanted a sealed coin as a keepsake. Others aimed squarely at collectors, especially those who knew the possibility, however slim, of the coin being a wide AM variety in pristine state. As with many collectibles, the intersection of rarity, condition, and story determined the final price. The broader conversation about pennies continued to evolve in the background. Economists and lawmakers debated the logic of keeping a coin in circulation that cost more to make than it was worth. Some argued for eliminating the penny altogether, rounding all transactions to the nearest 5 cents. Others resisted, citing tradition, charity drives that relied on penny donations, and the intangible charm of the smallest denomination. For collectors, these debates added urgency to the hobby. If the penny were ever discontinued, its existing population would become a finite resource, and certain varieties might see spikes in demand. It's in this atmosphere that rumors of astronomical values, like the claim of a 2000 penny worth $234 million, can take root. While such numbers are far removed from actual market reality, they capture the imagination. A headline boasting such a value draws in casual readers, some of whom might then learn about the real, more modest but still exciting values that certain varieties can bring. The myth feeds the truth, and the truth feeds the hunt. The year 2000 penny also holds a unique place in the visual evolution of the Lincoln cent. Just 9 years later, in 2009, the Lincoln Memorial reverse would be retired in favor of new designs marking the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth, and in 2010 the Shield reverse would debut. This means the 2000 cent sits in the final decade of the Memorial design's 50-year run, making it both a modern coin and a link to a design era that is now over. For those who collected Memorial cents by year, the 2000 issue was just another entry at the time. For those who came later, it became part of a closed chapter in the cents history. In examining a 2000 Lincoln cent today, whether common or rare variety, one is reminded that coins are more than spending instruments. They are little storytellers, recording in their metal the designs, technology, and even mistakes of the mints that produced them. They also carry with them the circumstances of the time in which they were made. The year 2000 was an optimistic period for many Americans, a time when the economy was still strong before the early 2000s downturn, when the internet felt like an exciting frontier, and when something as simple as a penny in a cereal box could feel like a tiny piece of the future. To hold one of these coins now is to hold a fragment of that moment, tangible and unchanged, even as the world around it has shifted dramatically. Imagine, for a moment, a single 2000 Lincoln cent on the day it was born. The Philadelphia Mint hums with the mechanical rhythm of presses striking blanks into coins at astonishing speed, hundreds of strikes per minute, each one delivering thousands of pounds of force to impress the familiar design into a small disc of copper-plated zinc. The planchets, freshly washed and polished, flash under the overhead lights as they move along conveyors toward the coining presses. There's a faint metallic scent in the air, mixed with the oil and grease that keep the machines running smoothly. Somewhere in the building, a single die, meant for proof coinage, finds itself in a bin destined for regular production. No one notices, or perhaps someone does but assumes it won't matter. The result is that a handful of coins will leave the press with that subtle wide AM reverse design, a tiny anomaly in an ocean of uniformity. Once struck, our coin is swept into large hoppers, tumbling against its newly minted siblings. The sound is like a rainstorm of metal, sharp and constant, as thousands of coins cascade into bags bound for distribution. The bags are heavy, coarse, each holding thousands of dollars and pennies, stitched shut and tagged for delivery to banks. From here, our coin's journey becomes less precise. It may leave the mint that day, or it may sit in storage for weeks before a truck carries it away. It might be sent to a regional Federal Reserve Bank, where it will be repackaged and shipped to a local branch in Philadelphia, or it might travel across state lines, finding its way into circulation far from the city where it was made. For months, perhaps years, the coin moves anonymously through hands and cash drawers. It could be given as change at a gas station, dropped into a child's lunchbox, spent at a corner store, or tossed into the bottom of a handbag. At some point, it might end up in a coin jar on a kitchen counter, waiting until the jar is full before being taken to a bank or coin machine. In all that time, its difference goes unnoticed. The wide spacing between the A and M is invisible to casual glances. To most people, it's just another penny, indistinguishable from billions of others. Its surface might pick up faint contact marks from being jostled among coins, but if it's lucky, it avoids the worst of circulation wear. Maybe it spends much of its life tucked in a forgotten drawer, shielded from the slow abrasion that dulls details and flattens designs. Then comes the day of discovery. Somewhere, someone pours a pile of change onto a table and begins looking closely. Perhaps they've recently read about rare pennies online or seen a video explaining how to spot valuable coins. They pick up the 2000 cent, turn it under the light, and peer through a magnifying glass. Their eyes shift to the reverse, scanning the lettering. They compare the space between the A and the M to a regular penny. And there it is, a gap just a little wider than the ordinary, crisp and unmistakable to the trained eye. The heart quickens. The mind races. Could this be one of the elusive wide AM varieties? A quick search confirms the diagnostics. The distance, the shape of the lettering, the alignment all match the known rare variety. From here, the path forks. The finder might place the coin in a protective holder and send it to a grading service for authentication. Weeks later, it comes back sealed in a slab with an official label, 2000 P Lincoln cent, wide AM, mint state 66. The grade is high enough to make it a desirable piece for collectors. It enters the market, perhaps through an online auction, perhaps through a coin show dealer, and is sold to a buyer who understands both its scarcity and its appeal. In this moment, the coin's journey shifts from one of utility to one of preservation. It will no longer pass through grocery store checkouts or bus fare boxes. Instead, it will live in a collection, admired for its story, its survival, and the quirk of fate that set it apart. Not every 2000 pennies journey is so charmed. Many wide AM examples have been lost to the churn of commerce, worn down to the point where their variety is hard to detect. Others have been dropped, damaged, or corroded beyond collectible value. The survival of a high-grade example is a delicate balancing act between chance and circumstance. That's what makes finding one in pristine condition so exciting. It's not just about rarity in numbers, but rarity in state of preservation. The Cheerios pennies follow a different but equally interesting path. Imagine a factory floor not at the mint, but at a General Mills plant. Conveyor belts carry boxes of cereal past the station where a small sealed packet, containing a single 2,000 Lincoln cent, is dropped inside before the box is closed and sealed. These coins are fresh from the mint, still bright from the strike, untouched by circulation. They leave the factory hidden among countless cereal boxes, bound for supermarkets across the country. In kitchens from Maine to California, children find them nestled between plastic bags of cereal and cardboard flaps, tearing open the small plastic wrapping to reveal a shiny new penny. For most, it's spent within days, mingling instantly with the common coins of everyday life. But for a few, it's kept, tucked into a drawer, added to a coin folder, or even left unopened in its original plastic as a curiosity. Decades later, these surviving examples, especially those still sealed, become time capsules of the year 2000, the coin's luster protected as if the mint had just struck it. What unites both the wide AM and Cheerios stories is the role of human connection. A rare coin isn't rare simply because of numbers, it's rare because people notice it, talk about it, search for it, and preserve it. Without the awareness of collectors and the curiosity of casual finders, these varieties would vanish into the background of everyday commerce. But because of that attention, they are lifted from obscurity, given names, catalogued, graded, and woven into the fabric of numismatic history. And so, the journey of a single 2,000 penny becomes more than the story of a coin. It becomes a story about awareness, about the way small details can change meaning entirely, about the thrill of finding something special in a sea of sameness. It's a reminder that value isn't always about size or grandeur. Sometimes it's about rarity, condition, and the human stories that form around an object over time. For the collector holding a high-grade 2000 wide AM or a pristine Cheerios penny, the coin is both a piece of metal and a piece of history, carrying with it the echoes of the mint floor, the hum of cereal box conveyors, the thrill of discovery, and the satisfaction of preservation. When a coin moves from a collector's hand into an auction room, whether physical or online, it steps into an entirely different world. It is no longer a quiet object in a folder or a display case. It becomes a contender in a marketplace fueled by desire, competition, and the unpredictable rhythm of bidding. The 2000 Lincoln cent, particularly in its rare forms like the wide AM or the Cheerios promotion pieces, has had its share of moments in this arena. The scene often begins quietly, a lot description in a glossy catalog or a high-resolution photograph on a website, listing the coin's variety, grade, and provenance. For many coins, the early interest is modest. Collectors browse, maybe set a mental limit on what they would be willing to pay. But every so often, something changes. Perhaps the coin's grade is unusually high, the strike unusually sharp, or the luster particularly vivid. Perhaps it's one of the few known examples in such pristine condition. And then there's the story, the narrative that transforms it from a mere object into a piece of history worth fighting for. Bidding wars are as much about psychology as they are about value. Two determined bidders, each unwilling to concede, can drive the price of a coin far beyond its initial estimate. The increments climb, $50, $100, $500, until the numbers no longer represent the coin's intrinsic or even market value, but the intensity of the competition itself. In the heat of the moment, each raise of the paddle or click of the mouse becomes a statement. I will not lose this. For the spectators, it's a show. For the bidders, it's personal. And when the hammer finally falls, the winning bidder's heart pounds with both triumph and relief, while the underbidder walks away calculating when they'll have another chance. It's in these moments that myths like the $234 million penny can begin to take shape. Of course, number 2000 penny has fetched anywhere near that sum. But all it takes is one extraordinary price for a different coin, a 1794 flowing hair silver dollar selling for over $10 million, for example, for the public imagination to stretch that possibility across other rarities. Add in the way information travels online, where headlines are designed to shock and entice clicks, and suddenly an ordinary coin with an unusual feature can be paired with an outrageous number. Someone writes an article speculating about its potential value, perhaps without grounding it in actual sales data, and the rumor takes on a life of its own. Social media accelerates the process. A photograph of a penny and a bold claim about its worth spreads faster than corrections or nuanced explanations ever could. Soon, people are checking their pockets in the hope that their spare change might be their ticket to unimaginable wealth. For seasoned collectors, these viral stories are both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, they draw fresh attention to the hobby, sparking interest in people who might never have thought about coin varieties before. On the other hand, they can create unrealistic expectations, leading to disappointment when a coin that looked promising under a kitchen light turns out to be worth only face value. But even here, there is a silver lining. Many of those who start out chasing a mythical $1,000,000 penny find themselves drawn deeper into numismatics, learning about grading, minting history, and the thrill of hunting for legitimate rarities. A myth, once debunked, can still lead to a very real and rewarding pursuit. Actual sales of rare 2000 pennies are impressive in their own right. High-grade wide AM examples have crossed the block at several $100s apiece, and exceptional specimens have broken the $1,000 mark. Cheerios promotion coins, particularly those still sealed or in top mint state grades, have also commanded strong prices, sometimes exceeding $3,000. These are not life-changing sums for most, but they are extraordinary when you consider that the coins started life worth only 1 cent. This multiplication of value, hundreds or thousands of times the face value, is what keeps collectors scanning their change and submitting coins for grading. In the background of these sales lies the quiet work of authenticators and graders, professionals who examine each coin under magnification, assessing every detail. They look at the fields for hairlines and contact marks, study the devices for sharpness, and ensure the variety attribution is correct. Their judgment carries weight. A coin in a holder marked mint state 67 wide AM commands far more trust, and therefore a higher price, than the same coin raw and uncertified. Auction houses know this, and they market these coins accordingly, emphasizing their certified grades and rarity in the hope of attracting bidders who trust the label. The fascination with rare coins, and the prices they can achieve, is ultimately about more than the money. It's about owning something that very few people have, about holding in your hand a small piece of a story that connects history, craftsmanship, and chance. For the winner of a competitive auction, the coin is more than just an acquisition, it's a trophy, proof of persistence, knowledge, and perhaps a bit of luck. And for the rest of us, the story of that auction becomes part of the lore we tell, the fuel for the next search, the next hopeful glance at a penny's reverse under bright light. Over time, these stories intertwine. The real auction results, the viral myths, the quiet discoveries and change, they weave together into a tapestry that makes the 2000 Lincoln cent far more than just another coin. It becomes a symbol of possibility, of the idea that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary secrets. And as long as that possibility exists, as long as there are eyes willing to look closely and hearts willing to hope, the legend of the rare 2000 penny, whether worth hundreds, thousands, or an imagined hundreds of millions, will continue to grow. When you look at a 2000 Lincoln cent, the first thing that meets your eyes is Abraham Lincoln's face, calm and determined, etched into the metal in a design that has endured through wars, recessions, technological revolutions, and sweeping cultural change. The portrait, crafted by Victor David Brenner in 1909, was the first time a U.S. coin featured the image of an actual historical figure. Before Lincoln's centennial year, American coins carried allegorical representations of liberty, personified as a goddess-like figure. The decision to place a real person's likeness on a coin was met with hesitation by some, but Lincoln's legacy, his leadership through the Civil War, his dedication to the Union, his eloquence in defending liberty, was so revered that the change felt fitting. In 1909, his profile replaced the symbolic liberty, and for over a century it has stared resolutely into the future from the obverse of the penny. By 2000, Brenner's design had been modified slightly to adapt to modern minting technology, but the essence remained. Lincoln's gaze is steady, his bow tie crisp, the shadows and highlights of his beard giving texture to the small field of the coin. The word liberty sits to his left, a reminder that this smallest denomination still carries the largest ideals. Above his head arcs the phrase "I in God we trust," first appearing on coins during the Civil War as a reflection of the nation's spiritual resilience. To the right, the date 2000 marks not just a year, but a moment in history, the threshold of a new millennium. Flip the coin over, and you see Frank Gasparo's depiction of the Lincoln Memorial, a structure built to honor the man whose face graces the front. Gasparo's design, introduced in 1959, replaced the wheat ears that had adorned the reverse for 50 years. In its place, the memorial rose, its columns aligned in sharp symmetry, the seated statue of Lincoln faintly visible at the center if you look closely enough. Gasparo had managed to fit not only the grand architecture but the essence of reverence into the smallest of canvases. Above the memorial arcs United States of America, and below it, in large letters, 1 cent, leaving no doubt as to the coin's denomination. The Latin motto E pluribus unum, out of many, one, sits between, echoing the unity Lincoln fought to preserve. By the time the year 2000 rolled around, this design pairing had been in place for over 4 decades, becoming as familiar to Americans as their own signature. But the world around it was changing. The average consumer was carrying fewer coins, using credit and debit cards more often, and making purchases online. Vending machines and parking meters still relied on coins, but even they were slowly shifting toward card or electronic payment systems. Coins, once the lifeblood of everyday transactions, were quietly becoming less central to the daily flow of commerce. For the penny, this decline in practical necessity meant that its role as a cultural artifact was beginning to outpace its role as money. Collectors, of course, had always seen the penny as more than a means of exchange. In 2000, the generation of numismatists who had grown up filling Whitman folders with wheat cents was joined by a new wave of enthusiasts drawn in by the state quarter program. Coin collecting was having a quiet resurgence, and the penny, especially in rare varieties, benefited from the heightened awareness. The wide AM variety became a talking point at coin shows and in hobby magazines, while the Cheerios promotion stirred nostalgic curiosity. Each story added to the Lincoln cents mythology, reinforcing the idea that it was more than a lowly 1-cent piece. At the same time, debates about the future of the penny were becoming louder. Economists pointed out that inflation had eroded its purchasing power to almost nothing, and that the cost to produce and distribute each cent now exceeded its face value. Some countries, like Canada, had already taken steps to phase out their lowest denomination coins, rounding cash transactions to the nearest 5 cents. But in America, tradition held strong. Lincoln's image, the coin's role in charity drives and sayings like, "A penny saved is a penny earned," and the sheer familiarity of the penny made eliminating it a politically delicate move. For many, the penny was an enduring link to the past, a small constant in a world that seemed to be changing faster than ever. The artistry of the 2000 penny lies not only in its design but in its endurance. Imagine all the events it has quietly witnessed: the launch of new technology, shifts in political leadership, moments of national triumph and tragedy. A penny minted in 2000 might have been in someone's pocket on the morning of September 11, 2001. It might have been dropped into a tip jar during the recession of 2008. It might have been handed to a child as a keepsake, passed along from parent to child as a good luck charm. These silent journeys layer invisible history onto each coin, making even the most ordinary example a time capsule of human experience. For the collector holding a rare variety from that year, the artistry deepens. They see not just Lincoln in the memorial, but the minting quirks, the die characteristics, the microscopic differences that make this coin different from the billions around it. They understand that Brenner and Gasparo's designs are not static. They interact with the minting process, with each strike producing subtle variations in detail and texture. In this way, every 2000 penny is both part of a uniform whole and uniquely individual, its story shaped by the moment of its creation and the years of its survival. As America moved further into the 21st century, the penny's place in daily life would continue to shrink, but its role in the hearts of collectors would only grow. The 2000 Lincoln cent, with its blend of tradition, artistry, and hidden rarity, stands as a bridge between eras, a reminder of the time when coins were still an everyday companion, and of the timeless thrill that comes from discovering the extraordinary in something so small and familiar.